India, the world's third biggest carbon emitter. But that could change with its ambitious plans to go green.
India is at the cusp of making a revolutionary energy transition.
Our survival is solar energy. The center of our existence is solar energy.
But is the target to switch half its electricity generation capacity to non-fossil fuel sources by 2030 simply a pipe dream?
I'm not sure that this is going to happen in the next 5 years. This will take 20, 30 years.
And will supply chain issues dim the country's solar prospects?
It's so dependent upon China.
Can India make the biggest energy transition in the history of mankind? Raya Chalu, a nondescript village on the borders of the southern Indian states of Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh. Located in a semi-arid region that receives scanty rainfall, the district was declared drought-hit 54 times in the last 6 decades. But today, Raya Chalu and 4 other villages are on the international solar map, being part of the Pavagada Solar Park. A sea of solar panels stretch over 13,000 acres, or 53 square kilometers. The Pavagada Park, completed in 2019, has a capacity of 2,050 megawatts, transforming arid, uncultivable land into a clean energy fountainhead.
India is a land of opportunities, figuratively and literally. And when we started looking at our energy transition, the option in front of us, having these huge chunks of arid, uncultivable lands, was to use them for energy generation.
This solar park is the 3rd largest of its kind in the world, after Badla Solar Park in central India and Huanghe Hydropower Hainan Solar Park in China. And India has plans to build more.
If everything goes right, in the next 4 years, 6 out of the top 10 solar parks, largest solar parks in the world, will be in India, including 1, 2, 4, 5, 6 and 7.
Many villagers looked at the project with hope when construction of the park started in 2017. It was an economic opportunity in a place where life was a hard grind. Yearly droughts forced many people to leave agriculture and migrate to cities looking for work. For 32-year-old farmer Manjunath, however, leaving the village was never an option.
సార్లుగా ఉంది, వర్షాలు తక్కువ, లేబర్స్ అంతా తక్కువ, ఊర్లో జనాలంతా పంట పండిలేక గ్రామం అంతా వదిలి టౌన్కి పోతున్నారు. మేము ఊరు వదిలిపోకుండా దానికి మేము ఒక 2 ఎకరాలు 3 ఎకరాలు పంట పెట్టినా కానీ అది లాస్ అయ్యేది. మాకు ₹1,00,000 ఖర్చు పెడితే 10,000 కానీ మాకు చేతికి అందదు. పశువులకి మేత కోసము మేము చాలా అగసాట్లు పడి గడ్డి పండించి వర్షాలు లేక నీళ్ళు తాగడానికి 5-6 కిలోమీటర్లు పోయి నీళ్ళు ఎత్తుకొచ్చి పశువులకి మాకు అంతా సౌకర్యం చేసుకుంటున్నాము. పెట్టినా కానీ జంగల్ అనిమల్స్ అంటే అడవి పందులు ఇటువంటివి అనిమల్స్ అన్నీ వచ్చి మాకు చాలా దాడి చేసేటివి. దానికి మాకు అటువంటి నైట్ అండ్ డే ఎక్కువ అగసాట్లు పడినా కానీ పంట అనేది ఎక్కువ మాకు చేతికి రాదు. వర్షాలు కొద్దిగా చాలా దెబ్బతీసేది. మాకు కరెంట్ తక్కువే, బోర్లో నీళ్ళు ఇంచి నీళ్ళు వస్తాయంతే. ఇంచి నీళ్ళు డ్రిప్ చేసి పంట పెట్టాక మాకు పంట అనేది చేతికి లేదు. మాకు తాగేదానికి నీళ్ళు చాలా ఇబ్బంది అయ్యేది. నీళ్ళు తాగే నీళ్ళు మంచివి కాబట్టి ఫ్లోరైడ్ వాటర్ ఇంకా మాకు కిడ్నీ ప్రాబ్లం కానీ ఎక్కువ మా చుట్టుపక్కల గ్రామంలో ఎక్కువ ఉండేది. అట్లా ఇంకా చాలా ఇబ్బంది మాకు ఉంది.
But the solar park project has now transformed Manjunath and his family's life. They have leased a portion of their land to the solar park, which provides them with a steady income.
సోలార్ వస్తుందని చెప్పండి మాకు చాలా సంతోషమైంది. మేము సోలార్కి లీజ్కి 40 acres ఇచ్చినాము. ఓ ఏకర్ 21,000 స్టార్టింగ్. ఏమంటే మాకు పంట పండించేదానికి వర్షాలు లేక మేము అట్లానే సోలార్కి ఇచ్చినాము. సోలార్కి ఇచ్చిన తర్వాత మాకు బాగా దుడ్లు వచ్చినాయి.
This works up to an income of about $10,000 per year, twice the average annual salary in India.
మేము ఒక కొత్త ఇల్లు కట్టించినాము, ఒక కారు కొన్నాము, 2 బైకులు, ఒక ట్రాక్టర్, మళ్ళీ పశువులు ఇంకా మెయింటైన్ చేసుకుంటున్నాం. ఇంకా 10 ఎకరాలు భూమి పెట్టుకున్నాము. 10 ఎకరాల్లో మేము మా ఇంటి మండసానికి రైస్, శనక్కాయలు కానీ మా ఊరు రాచర్ల గ్రామంలో మేము డైరీ ఫామ్ అనే డెవలప్మెంట్ చేస్తున్నాము. ఊర్లో చిన్న చిన్న రైతులకి అందరికీ పశువులు తీసుకొచ్చి డైరీలో మిల్క్ వేసేదానికి ఒక సన్న రూట్ చూపిస్తున్నాము. దానికి మాకు బాగా మంచి ఇన్కమ్ వస్తుంది.
Very often, land acquisition for government or private projects runs into obstacles as farmers are unwilling to give up their ancestral lands. Manjunath's lease agreement with the solar park is seen as a novel template for dealing with land acquisition issues. Under this plan, a farmer leases his land to the solar park for a quarter of a century and earns a regular income every year. After 28 years, the land will be returned to the farmer in its original condition.
Getting land is a problem anywhere you go because it has an emotional impact. This land, it belongs to their ancestors. So instead of purchasing land, we adopted the lease method, wherein the lien of the land, the ownership of the land remains undisturbed for the entire 28 years. 25 years is the lifetime of the project, any project. So in addition to that, we took 1.5 years for acquiring the land, and we have proposed 1.5 years for dismantling of the project. There is a regular source of income to the family. We also adopted the digital mode of transfer. This entire amount was transferred into their accounts. So there were no middlemen or agents in between. The farmer was getting his amount guaranteed, and that is now going on in the same way. And even the 5% escalation once in 2 years is also guaranteed to him.
India is a signatory to the Paris Agreement. The world's second most populated nation has pledged to switch half its electricity generation capacity to non-fossil fuel sources by 2030. A challenging prospect, given that in 2020, 44% of the country's power came from coal and another 31% from oil and gas, according to the IEA. The success of projects like the Pavagada solar park is critical for India to achieve its Paris climate targets. In a little over a decade, India has moved from having around 10 megawatts of photo-voltaic or PV capacity to over 60 gigawatts this year.
5 अमृत तत्व रखना चाहता हूं, पंचामृत की सौगात देना चाहता हूं.
And Prime Minister Narendra Modi has committed to increasing solar capacity 5-fold come 2030.
Prime Minister Modi at Glasgow has given a Panchamrit formula, out of which we want to install 500 gigawatt of renewable energy, out of which 350, almost 350 will be coming from solar energy. This clarion call given by the Prime Minister is ambitious but also pragmatic. 350 gigawatt of solar might seem like a huge figure, but for a country which is technically a subcontinent, 350 gigawatt of solar is completely achievable, and we are on the right track. Today, if you look at India's solar energy growth, in the last 7 years, we have increased the capacity 17 times. No other country has done it. We are the world's 5th largest country in solar installation, and very soon we are going to be 4th. We are also world's 4th largest in terms of wind capacity, and we are the only of the 4 countries in the world who has or which has installation of almost 150 gigawatt of renewable energy. So we are already on track to achieve our goals, and I think this decade is very, very important for us, and if done right, this decade will truly be India's decade of energy transition?
These are very ambitious targets, but they're also achievable if we put our mind to it. We have to recognize that India is already one of the fastest growing renewable energy markets in the world. We are at 115,000 megawatts of solar, wind and biomass, and including large hydro at 165,000 megawatts of non-fossil electricity capacity. So what we've set as targets for 2030 would be the first example of a major economy building more renewables within a decade than its entire electricity system as it stands today.
Together with this energy transition comes an investment in infrastructure. In Raya Chalu, apart from providing farmers with steady income, the solar park is also investing in building roads and extending school buildings. There is now a drinking water vending machine where a villager inserts a 5 rupee coin and gets 20 litres of clean drinking water. Manjunath expects the power situation in the village to improve further in the coming months.
అప్పుడు మాకు పంటల పంట పెట్టేటప్పుడు మాకు కరెంట్ చాలా ఇబ్బందిగా ఉండే. వర్షాల కాలం వస్తే కరెంట్ అనేది అసలు కానరాదు మాకు. ఇప్పుడు సోలార్ పార్క్ వచ్చినాక కొద్దిగా పర్వాలేదు, కరెంటు బాగా కంట్రోల్ చేసి కరెంట్ బాగా ఇస్తున్నారు.
The development seen in this little village is analogous to the rest of India. It is the fastest growing economy in the G20, a growth that has till now been powered by fossil fuels. Even as India sets wildly ambitious renewable targets, is it enough to keep up with the energy demands that come with rapid industrialization? In India's capital, Delhi, the metro carries almost 2 million passengers each day. And about 60% of these trips are powered from a source some 800 kilometers away. This is the remote village of Badwa. It is here that the Rewa Ultra Mega Solar Park stands as a shining example of the country's march towards a clean and green future. With over 3.5 million solar panels, it has a capacity of 750 megawatts, enough to power 750,000 homes.
देखिए, जब ये प्लांट लगा था, ये भारत के लिए बहुत बड़ी घटना थी, क्योंकि सोलर एनर्जी, सोलर पावर प्लांट छोटे छोटे तो बहुत लग रहे थे, लेकिन बड़ा प्रोजेक्ट लगना एक बहुत बड़ी उपलब्धि थी भारत के लिए.
India is on a massive solar building spree. In its target to reach net zero carbon emissions by 2070, it is estimated that the country will devote 50 to 75,000 square kilometers to solar projects. That's an area about 100 times the size of Singapore. The Rewa Ultra Mega Solar Park itself covers some 4,000 acres, roughly the size of 3,000 soccer fields. This barren, rocky landscape is now a massive electricity generator.
देखिए, ये एक शूटिंग रेंज था और पहाड़ी क्षेत्र था. इसमें सबसे बड़ा प्लस पॉइंट ये था कि गवर्नमेंट की ज़मीन बहुत ज़्यादा थी और प्राइवेट ज़मीन कम थी.
One major obstacle for solar in India has been land acquisition. There have been protests and lawsuits in other parts of India over potential solar projects, and the cost of purchasing land can be prohibitive.
उन ज़मीनों को प्राइवेट लोगों से प्राप्त करना एक कठिन काम था, क्योंकि उनसे हमें ज़मीन खरीदनी पड़ती है. उसके लिए बाकायदा कलेक्टर के द्वारा रेट तय होते हैं और फिर उनको पूरा सर्वे करके उनसे बाकायदा ज़मीन अधिग्रहण करनी पड़ती है. तो एक लंबी प्रक्रिया होती है.
Right now there still is land, especially in what are called the wastelands where the renewable energy projects come up. But over time we will have to get creative because we are looking at, for our net zero ambitions, we will need thousands of gigawatts of solar and wind, not in the hundreds but in the thousands. Which means that we have to build on land, but we have to build on water, we have to build on ponds, we have to build on rivers, we'll have to build on roofs, we'll have to build on farms. We'll have to make all of this both distributed but also connected. And that is really the future of the power markets for India and for many other parts of the world.
But for the villages and towns that allow solar plants to be built on their grounds, there are promises of benefits. 5 years ago in 2017, when bidding for the project closed, the Rewa Solar Park was the country's cheapest energy provider. Even now, it has a tariff of less than 3 cents per kilowatt hour, while the tariff for coal-fired thermal plants is 5 US cents per kilowatt. Proponents of such solar projects also tout other perks.
The way solar has transformed rural employment is phenomenal. There was a point of time where these areas were not accessible by road. They didn't have basic amenities there, and there was a lot of migration from these places to the cities. Today, there is reverse migration. All the facilities are being set up near the parks. The place which never even knew what a hotel was or what a lodge was is now housing lodges, hotels, schools, ITIs, skill development centers, and economic hubs. So we can see mini economic hubs sprawling throughout the ecosystem across these solar plants.
देखिए, ये तो एक सामान्य सी बात है कि जब भी कोई इतना बड़ा प्रोजेक्ट आता है, अब 4-4.5 हज़ार करोड़ का इन्वेस्टमेंट अगर सरकार ने किया है या पार्टियों ने किया है, तो ये तो हो ही नहीं सकता कि आसपास के क्षेत्र का विकास ना हो। तो डेफिनेटली वहाँ के लोगों को, लगभग 5,000 लोगों को डायरेक्टली और इनडायरेक्टली रोज़गार मिला। दूसरा, वहाँ पे अभी भी हर साल इनको कंपनियां जो हैं वहाँ पे उनको CSR काम करने पड़ते हैं। मींस गांव जो भी आसपास के गांव हैं उनके विकास के लिए उनको पूरी योजना, पूरे साल की योजना बनानी पड़ती है, जिसमें स्कूल, सड़कें और दूसरे अन्य काम करने पड़ते हैं। ये प्लांट जो है वो 25 सालों तक यहाँ पे रहना है। एवरी डे कुछ नया होना है। रोज़ ग्रास कटिंग है, क्लीनिंग है। इसके लिए एक बहुत बड़े अमले की ज़रूरत पड़ती है, जिसके लिए वहाँ पे रोज़गार मिलना ही मिलना है।
But this promise of employment did not materialize for 30-year-old Brij Mahan Patel, a computer science graduate from Badwa.
पढ़ाई कंप्लीट करने के बाद मैं जॉब कर रहा था, मतलब बाहर जॉब करने का वो प्रोविजन हुआ, मैं जॉब कर रहा था। फिर जब ये लॉकडाउन लगा तो अपन लोग यहीं आ गए, मतलब गांव आ गए, वापस गांव आ गए। फिर जब ये रियलाइज़ हुआ कि जो वही चीज़ मैं मतलब बाहर कर रहा हूँ तो यहाँ जब मिल सकता है तो बाहर जाने की क्या ज़रूरत है। हम लोगों का वहाँ कोई पक्की नौकरी कंपनी की तरफ से नहीं थी, हम लोग कॉन्ट्रैक्ट बेस पे थे और एक तकरीबन 300-350 कॉन्ट्रैक्टर पेमेंट करता था हम लोगों को, और उसमें था ये ग्रास कटिंग और मॉड्यूलर क्लीनिंग का काम रहता था। जैसे बारिश हो जाता था उस टाइम काम रुक जाता है। टेक्नोलॉजी रोबोट वगैरह लग जाने के कारण ये हम लोगों को काम वहाँ से बंद कर दिया गया है।
Like Brij, farmer Ram Patel has also not seen the benefits of the solar project.
प्लांट आया, आने के लिए सर्वे हुआ तो बोले नोटिस दिए घर घर कि नौकरी सबको मिलेगी, स्कूल बनेगी, कॉलेज बनेगा, रोड बनेगा, हॉस्पिटल बनेगी, लाइट बनेगी, सब हुआ, कुछ हुआ नहीं आज तक।
To make matters worse, when the Brewa plant was built, the barbed wire perimeter fence cut off access to Ram's farm, where he grows lentils and pulses.
तार बाड़ी हो गई, हम लोग को जाने के लिए रास्ता नहीं है। जाना है तो 5 किलोमीटर इधर जाएं घूम के, अब 5-10 किलोमीटर इधर घूम के जाएं, तो ऊपर से बाहर से किधर से जाएंगे सर। अब बीच से तारबाड़ी हो गई, 2-2.5 फीट का रास्ता है, बस हो गया जाने के लिए इधर उधर से, कैसे जा ही सकते हैं। और यहाँ तो रोज़ काम कहीं मिलता नहीं है यहाँ, बस ऐसे दूसरे भाई जो बोले हमारा करवा दो, तुसी करवा दिए, जो यहाँ की मजदूरी है 100-150 है।
The problem with the building of renewable energy plants, whether it's wind or solar, is that You create a job for a very short period when the construction happens. And then after that, maintaining the asset does not actually require that many people, right? It's literally a handful of people. And so if you go to any renewable energy park area, whether it's in Bhadla or Rewa or other parts of Karnataka, the areas around these are ghost towns. They are not vibrant, industrial, job-creating, consumption multiplier driving regions.
Bridge and Ram's stories tell of the tensions with energy transition, especially at the scale that India is looking to implement. Could job losses be a major obstacle to the country's green plans?
On the job side, I think the story is actually quite encouraging at one level because of the number of jobs that are being created, not just in large-scale renewable energy, but also in distributed renewable energy. Our estimation at CW is that there are already over 111,000 jobs in large-scale wind and solar, and including distributed renewables, we're upwards of 300,000 jobs. We estimate that given the targets that India set for itself, by 2030 we should have a renewable energy workforce of over 1 million, which would translate to full-time equivalent employment of over 3 million, because the same worker can get deployed on multiple projects through the year.
But the estimated 1 million in job creation pales in comparison to the 21 million people that are directly or indirectly employed in the fossil fuel industry. Some, like coal miners, have little transferable skills. The fear is that as fossil fuels are phased out for renewables, these workers could be displaced.
One of the bigger problems in India is that where the coal jobs are and where the renewable energy plants are being created are almost completely mutually exclusive, right? So most of India's coal is in eastern and central India. Most of India's grid-scale renewable energy deployment is in western and southern India. So there's a big transfer of kind of job centers, resources, financial resources, which is happening. And it's exacerbating existing differences which already exist in India between regions.
Apart from the questions of land and employment, the nation also has to deal with its growing energy demand. India is the world's fastest growing major economy, expected to expand by 6.8% this year. And with it comes a thirst for electricity. It is estimated that India's power demand could double by 2030, driven by the growing tech sector. The sector currently consumes 11% of the total energy output. In 2030, it will need 25% of the total energy produced. High-tech infrastructure, such as robotic plants and data centers, are notoriously power-hungry.
Historically, Indian services have not been particularly energy intensive, but as data centers and other more kind of energy intensive forms of IT activity come up, I think the energy footprint of the IT sector will definitely grow. One of the interesting things is a lot of these large international tech firms are very committed to procuring renewable energy. It's not like Amazon and Google are going to open their own solar plants, but they're very clear they want to consume 100% renewable energy. And that has actually encouraged a lot of investment in the sector.
So India's push for renewables not only reduces its carbon footprint, but it could also attract investments from green-leaning multinationals, provided its renewable energy growth can keep pace with the surge in demand.
If you look at the net zero commitments of a lot of corporations, especially in the IT sector, these will have to look at not just the production of the equipment, but also the use of the equipment, which is the scope 1, 2, and 3 of the emissions. And data centers are huge guzzlers of energy.
I'm not sure that in the short term, for example, in the next 5 years, just building more renewable energy will satisfy Indian energy demand.
One side we are producing more electricity, but at the same time we are wasting more electricity. That doesn't make sense. So yes, we can meet our demand, but I would always strongly believe that that is only possible when we become sensible user of energy.
There is one other challenge that may dim India's solar fortunes. The country's solar growth is heavily dependent on imports of wafers and components from its main rival, China. Can India break away from the Chinese monopoly and blaze its own solar trail? Kotputli, a congested town off National Highway 48 in the central Indian state of Rajasthan. 36-year-old orthopedic surgeon Amit Singh runs a busy hospital catering to poor residents. In 2017, Dr. Singh received a massively inflated electricity bill from the State Power Distribution Company, or DISCOM.
तो जो हमारा फर्स्ट बिल आया वो आया अराउंड 1.5 लाख रुपए का बिल, जबकि मेरा कंजप्शन उस टाइम 10,000 रुपये पर मंथ का था। मैं इलेक्ट्रिसिटी बोर्ड के पास गया कि आपने मेरे को गलत बिल जनरेट करके दिया। उन्होंने मेरे को कहा कि अभी आप एक बार ये पैसा जमा करा दो हमारे पास 1.5 लाख, आगे वाले बिलों में हम इसको एडजस्ट कर लेंगे। नोटिस दिया कि भाई आप बिल जमा कराओ नहीं तो हम आपका कनेक्शन काट देंगे। मैंने कहा कनेक्शन कैसे काट दोगे, मैं कोर्ट में चला जाऊँगा।
The incident pushed Dr. Singh to switch the hospital to solar power.
तो मेरे किसी इंजीनियर मित्र ने मेरे को ऐसे कहा कि आप सोलर लगवा लो छत के ऊपर। तो हमने शुरू में स्टार्टिंग उसमें 11 किलोवाट के ऊपर छत के ऊपर सोलर लगाया। ऑफ ग्रिड लगाने से लगा लिया, उसके बाद हमारा बिल उन्होंने सही करके दे दिया मार्च एंड में आके। ऑफ ग्रिड सोलर हमारा सक्सेसफुल नहीं हुआ। ऑफ ग्रिड सोलर था तो बैटरी सिस्टम पे चलता था, वो इतना एफिशिएंटली वर्क नहीं कर रहा था। कभी उसमें कभी वायर जल रहा था, कभी कुछ हो रहा था, कभी कुछ हो रहा था। तो मैंने एक जयपुर से कोई मेरा अच्छा इंजीनियर था, उससे मैंने सलाह ली। तो उन्होंने कहा कि आप इसको ऑन ग्रिड लगाओ, ग्रिड के साथ टाई अप करो इसको। फिर हमने इसको ग्रिड के साथ टाई अप करा। ग्रिड के साथ टाई अप करने से क्या हमारा बिजली का बिल था ना वो रिड्यूस हो गया, और जो हम डीजल की खपत कर रहे थे, जनरेटर चला रहे थे, वो हमारा कम हो गया।
By hooking to the grid, the hospital can draw power from the grid when there is no sunshine to generate solar energy. With the rooftop solar at the hospital proving to be a breakthrough, Dr. Singh set up a small solar park in his village. Now, the power cuts in his village have reduced substantially. In India's transition to green energy, the big players can't do it all. Private installers like Dr. Singh are an important cog in meeting the country's solar goals. The target is for 52 million households to install private solar panels by 2030. 34-year-old Sandeep Sharma, who runs a renewable energy company, has seen burgeoning growth in private demand for solar installations.
हम लोगों के पास डिमांड जो है वो रेगुलरली बढ़ रही है। जितने भी इंडस्ट्रियल हैं या जितने भी मतलब पढ़े लिखे लोग हैं जो आसपास के हैं, अपने घरों पे भी लोगों ने इसको लगाने के लिए काफ़ी हम लोगों के पास इंक्वायरीज आ रही हैं। 10 सालों में पैनल का जो प्राइस है वो काफ़ी कम हुआ है, प्लस जितने भी उसमें इक्विपमेंट लगते हैं उनका प्राइस भी काफ़ी कम हुआ है। इंस्टॉलेशन कॉस्ट की आप बात करें तो इंस्टॉलेशन कॉस्ट भी उसी रेशो में काफ़ी कम हुई है। प्लस गवर्नमेंट जो है, गवर्नमेंट भी इस पे रेजिडेंशियल पे सब्सिडी प्रोवाइड कर रही है। आप अपने रेजिडेंशियल हाउस पे अगर आप लगाएंगे तो गवर्नमेंट ने क्या करा है, बेंचमार्क प्राइसेस फिक्स किए हुए हैं।
With the success of his previous efforts, Dr. Singh is thinking of installing more solar parks. But there's a significant obstacle.
जब हम हमारा तीसरा प्लांट लगाने की सोच रहे थे तब मेरे दिमाग में आया कि अपन सोलर पैनल खुद की मैन्युफैक्चरिंग कर लें। हमने इस पूरी रिसर्च करी, इसके बारे में, मशीनों के बारे में, कैसे बनता है, क्या नहीं बनता है। कई बार हमने कोई फैक्ट्री को विजिट करके आए। तो बाद में हमारे को इसमें एहसास हुआ है कि ऑल मैन्युफैक्चरर आर इम्पोर्ट फ्रॉम चाइना। तो सोलर सेल सारे चाइना से इम्पोर्ट करते हैं, ये सिर्फ असेंबलिंग करते हैं।
Right now, over 90% of the world's silicon wafer manufacturing is done in China. Silicon wafers are critical components of solar panels. They are what photovoltaic cells are made of. With China having a near monopoly on these silicon wafers, any disruption to supply could halt India's solar dreams. For example, when COVID struck, shut factories and closed borders led to a wafer shortage, which persists to this day.
जब तक कि हमारा पास रॉ मटेरियल खुद का नहीं बनाएंगे, मैन्युफैक्चर नहीं करेंगे, या सिलिकॉन वेफर जब तक हमारे देश में नहीं बनेगा, तब तक ये टारगेट अचीव करना मेरे को लगता नहीं, बहुत मुश्किल काम। क्योंकि सोल डिपेंडेंट अपॉन चाइना, वो सप्लाई चेन को बाधित कर देता है तो रेटें बढ़ जाती हैं। जैसे रेटें बढ़ती हैं तो स्पीड स्लो डाउन हो जाती काम की। अपने पास एक हाई टेक्नोलॉजी चाहिए और हमारे पास ऐसे इंजीनियर्स चाहिए जो हमारे इस काम को करके दिखा दें, हमारे सिलिकॉन वेफर बना दें और सोलर सेल मैन्युफैक्चरिंग हो जाए हमारे हिंदुस्तान में।
Sandeep's company, Easy Photo-voltaic, currently has a turnover of over $600,000. From just 10 employees when he first started 10 years ago, he now employs more than 100. But the reliance on Chinese components could dampen his plans for expansion.
आप सोलर सेल की बात कर लीजिए या आप बैकशीट की बात कर लीजिए, ठीक है, या आप सीलेंट्स की बात कर लीजिए, सिलिकॉन सीलेंट इसमें एक आइटम लगता है वो है, तो ये सारी चीज़ें हम लोगों को इंपोर्ट पे ही डिपेंडेंट है। और मोर ओवर लेटेस्ट से कि मैं आज ऑर्डर फाइनलाइज करता हूँ चाइना के किसी भी वेंडर के साथ, तो इट विल टेक अराउंड 1 महीना। मेरी फैक्ट्री, उसकी फैक्ट्री से मेरी फैक्ट्री तक पहुँचने में लगभग 1 महीने का टाइम लगता है। तो वो बहुत बड़ा इशू है। इतना पैसा दे करके हम लोग रॉ मटेरियल मंगवाएं यहाँ, और वो भी इतने टाइम के बाद आएगा, तो वो कहीं ना कहीं हिंडर करता है किसी भी कंपनी की प्रोडक्शन को या ग्रोथ को।
India plans to increase its solar output by 5-fold in the next 8 years. This cannot be achieved without millions of solar panels. For India to reinvent itself as a renewable energy powerhouse, it must deal with this critical bottleneck. And the government is taking note.
Thanks to COVID, it has actually shown us the mirror on the vulnerabilities of our supply chain and procurement, most importantly pertaining to the energy security. So the government, keeping this in mind and heeding to the request from industry bodies like us, came up with a scheme called production linked incentives. The first tranche of this scheme had an outlay of 4,500 crores, roughly 500 million US dollars, and that scheme was oversubscribed by 19 companies with a total capacity of 53,000 megawatt. And by 2025-2026, India is going to be the second largest manufacturer or producer of polysilicon, wafer, cell and module. Today our share in global module manufacturing is 1.1%. We are going to scale it up to 25% in 6 years.
Reaching this ambitious target will require significant investments. Last December, the Modi government announced a $10 billion package to grow semiconductor manufacturing in India. While $10 billion is a decent package, it is dwarfed by the nearly $500 billion that its rival, China, has invested in the last 3 decades. To become a serious challenger to China's monopoly, both the public and private sectors will have to be willing to spend.
This is a capital intensive technology. To set up silicon manufacturing, it takes enormous amount of energy and also money to start with, and I think that is where the role of government could be. And I'm happy to see that some of the big corporate giants are actually now putting their money to set up the entire vertically integrated manufacturing, where we start with the raw material, where we produce silicon, then we produce solar cell, then we produce module. For making module, I need aluminum, I need glass, and all those industries are also kind of coming up within India itself.
I mean, the vast majority of panels deployed in India are still bought from China, right? There's some assembly that happens in some places, but India doesn't have ingot manufacturing and wafer manufacturing of its own at this point. These are industries which take also decades to develop. So there isn't going to be a solar manufacturing scene which displaces all of imported panels overnight. Personally, I think that India needs to pick its parts of the global supply chain wisely. Right now, India is not going to become a high-tech manufacturer of semiconductors overnight. That's what's being said, but that will again take a decade to happen.
For now, when it comes to manufacturing, India is playing catch-up. And as the effects of climate change are felt acutely in the subcontinent, there's plenty of urgency to make the clean energy transition. But in setting such ambitious solar targets, can India truly make good on its promises? India's solar man is on the move. Chetan Solanki got the nickname when he taught over 1 million students to build solar lamps. For the last 2 years, the IIT professor has been on a yatra, or journey across India, traveling in a solar-powered bus.
अच्छा, तो फिर लोगों को लगता है कि सॉल्यूशन क्या है? इसका सॉल्यूशन पूछेंगे तो सॉल्यूशन क्या है? सोलर एजुकेशन प्रोजेक्ट? Is that a solution?
His mission? To educate the public on renewable energy and climate change. So far, he has covered 20 states and over 300,000 kilometers, and he plans to keep going till 2030.
I started in 2020. 2030 is the Sustainable Development Goals target of the whole world, and I thought it is very nicely aligned. It cannot be done in, as I said, part and parcel, so I decided for 11 years I will not go home, and the bus, my Energy Swaraj Yatra bus, is my home for 11 years. It's going to be my home. Well, I believe that people will understand, because if they will not understand by the knowledge, but they will understand by the disastrous events that we are going to face and we are facing. So one way or other people will understand, and I believe and I hope that by the end of my yatra, there will be good success on the impacting the efforts that world is making towards solving the problem of climate change.
Chetan Solanki is a solar energy specialist and professor at the nation's prestigious Indian Institute of Technology, or IIT, in Mumbai. But today, his bus has taken him to the National Institute of Technology, Kurukshetra, 180 kilometers from Delhi, where he's talking to students about the ongoing climate disaster and the need to switch to solar immediately.
Silicon is the second largest material available on Earth, second largest. I keep saying that climate is not changing, climate has changed, and the impact of that we could see in our own life. Change is taking place so fast, it is accelerating. And what we are seeing in our own life is that there are heat waves, the entire country has experienced a heat wave, and then there are floods in Assam, 50 lakh people getting affected, and the water not subsiding for 15-20 days. We need to drastically and immediately change ourselves. What we need to change? We need to change the pattern of energy usage, because the whole problem has been caused because of the use of carbon-based energy. And I believe strongly that this problem will only be solved if we switch our base from carbon-based energy to solar-based energy, 100%, not 99%.
India is one of the few countries in the world where environmental education is compulsory in school. Yet, in a 2022 Yale study, about 54% of Indians confess to having little or no knowledge of global warming. This is something Solanki wants to change.
Well, the awareness is there about the climate change, that something is changing, but it's a very superficial level. They do not understand in really detail what is happening. And is it because of the climate change? Is it because of the global temperature rise? But everybody feels that things have changed. Normally when we talk about the climate change, it is always presented at a very top level thing. Like there's a Paris Agreement and there's a global temperature rise and CO2 emissions are rising and all this thing. I think we need to start narrating the climate change and its related issue at the ground level in their own language, in the manner that we could demonstrate that it is their own life it is getting affected. I think then this action will also be more stronger and more real action.
Though Solanki has undertaken a solo journey, others have also embarked on a climate-friendly and solar-dependent lifestyle to save the planet. Chokalinga Muthia, a businessman in the country's IT capital, Bengaluru, has built a dream home with virtually zero carbon footprint. The 325 square meter home is entirely powered by solar energy. It has never been connected to the state electricity grid.
We started off with 1.5 kilowatts on the roof, which at some point we found is not sufficient. We increased it by another 1 kilowatt. So we have 2.5 kilowatts now on the roof. And we said we will not also expand any more because power need is there. But the idea is to generate and work within that. That is conservation. So the entire house works to the cycle. We use as little as possible during the day and then conserve, so some charge also takes place for the batteries. So in the nights we are able to use power. And we have all the conveniences. We have refrigerator, we have television, we have computers, we have washing machine, we have bed grinder, the works, everything. There is no dearth of conveniences, but we will have to shuffle it. Suppose it is cloudy, I may not run the washing machine for 1 hour, I may run it for 15 minutes. Or I may not run at all, just wash by hand. So it goes like that.
The concept of rooftop solar is also catching up in the capital, Delhi. 43-year-old Avira Butler runs Geo Power, which sets up rooftop solar panels. Butler confirms he doesn't have to convince his customers about the need for solar anymore.
There is a world of difference in, for example, say 2016, 2017 to what we see in the market now. The people who want to install solar at that time were not aware how it works, what are the benefits of solar. It was more of an experiment for them. The level of knowledge has increased so much that if we ask any customer now, about what do you know about solar, for example, when they contact us, they know everything. They are even more aware about the kind of panels, what are the manufacturers, which all type of different inverters available, all options they are aware, they've already worked through. And the most important aspect, they're already aware what are the benefits of solar. They've seen how it works they've heard about it from their friends and relatives.
Last November, at the UN Conference of the Parties, or COP26 in Glasgow, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi promised to install 500 gigawatts of non-fossil renewable power capacity by 2030.
500 gigawatt tak pahunchayega.
He also said India will meet over 50% of its energy requirements from non-fossil renewable energy by the same year. Above all, India has pledged to reach a net zero carbon emissions target by 2070. And there is a lot riding on this pledge. Currently, India is the world's third largest producer of greenhouse gases, behind only China and the US. And in a business as usual scenario, its emissions could increase by more than 50%. At the same time, a 2021 study by the Climate Risk Index places India as the 7th most vulnerable country to extreme weather. Just this summer, it experienced record-breaking heat waves that left fields barren and people dead. Time is running out for climate action.
It's very clear at this point that the worst effects of climate change are happening in places like South Asia. So I think the average Indian's experience of climate change is not the label of climate change. It's through floods, it's through decreasing crop yields, it's through heat stress and you're working outside. And I think people are aware that things are getting worse.
Solar and renewable energy is what is going to save this planet.
There's no choice. There's no choice at all. See, we have to make sure that we have a growth model that is consistent with providing for the prosperity of an economy, the basic provisions of the people, and the integrity of the planet. And the only way forward is more investment in renewable energy.
If India succeeds in its ambitious solar targets, it could be one of the biggest energy transitions ever undertaken in a very short timetable. And Subramaniam, for one, believes the nation's track record proves they can do it.
There was a point of time where solar was not even the largest renewable energy source in the country. Today we are the largest renewable energy source, and it took us 7 years to get here. And 7 years from today we'll be at 2030, and solar is going to be the largest energy source, not largest renewable energy source, but largest energy source in the country, and that's where you have the answer.
Nonetheless, there will be many challenges for India to overcome to achieve 500 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2030. From supply chain problems, to infrastructure, to public education. In the meantime, the solar man of India continues his quest, convincing his countrymen of his vision, one stop at a time.
The use of solar energy or renewable energy is not a matter of choice, it is an emergency, and like we behave in emergency, we do everything possible and adopt it right now, immediately, 100%, because global warming is approaching very fast and the climate change is going to become irreversible very fast. So it's not a matter of choice, it is the question of survivability.